Welcome to The Fighter with Chris Sims. I am Chris Sims. I'm the Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, where we are always fighting for lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. Okay, this week is going to be a super busy week, so we really appreciate you guys making us a part of your day and a way to start the week. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and better yet, head on over to Juno News, take out a subscription there, head on over to taxpayer.com, sign a petition that's making you the most mad. And that way you join the fight and you're getting some work done this week. Okay, big show for you today. We're going to be speaking with Andrew Lawton. Yeah, remember him? He's from such shows as kind of this one. He had his own show, of course, on True North for years, and then that became Juno. Now he's this big fancy member of parliament out of London, Ontario. We're going to get the latest from him in Ottawa on what is going on Parliament Hill. What the heck was that budget? Why can't we get a trade deal with our biggest trading partner? What is going on there? And then we're going to shift gears slightly because I want to know what's happening here on the ground in Alberta, because we have this deadline. Remember, we have an ultimatum coming from Premier Daniel Smith with a deadline of Grey Cup. So Carney's got until Grey Cup kickoff to be able to actually reach all of those ultimatum deals that Premier Daniel Smith gave the Prime Minister. That includes things like pipelines, getting rid of the tanker ban, and getting rid of the energy cap, our production cap here in Alberta. So lots to talk about. Okay, the budget was a disaster, like flaming wreckage everywhere. It was nearly $80 billion in deficit. Sean, if you want to pull those numbers back up, I don't know if you have them. There we go. Oh, that's just disgusting. Take a look there. So the deficit, of course, is the annual debt. Okay, so it is close to $80 billion with a B. Spoiler alert, that is more than what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was planning to blow his budget by. Carney's doing it worse, okay? The debt, the national debt, is going to hit $1.3 trillion this year with a T. That is terrifying because we pay the interest on that thing every single year. It is a line item in the budget, folks. It's something we all have to pay. Debt interest, more than $55 billion. That's just this year. Put another way, it costs about $1 billion to build a new hospital. Okay, so do that visualization. Build a brand new hospital, all the fresh paint and all the stuff. Instead of moving people into it, burn it down. Burn it down every single week. Okay, Saturday night, gather around, kids, burn down a hospital. That's what we're wasting on debt interest. The problem here is twofold. One, the adults are noticing now. Okay, remember how we were warning that if we keep blowing our budgets like this, if we keep pretending that money isn't real and is just some social construct that has no consequences, that we were going to get a warning coming from international credit rating agencies? It's happening. Here, let's pull up this headline. It is so scary. Fitch, okay, for those of you that don't know, that is an international credit rating agency, okay? Big money. Fitch warns Canada of credit downgrade. That is bad news for mortgages. Of course, that's bad news for mortgages because that affects our lending rates, okay? It's also bad news just for taxpayers writ large because I don't want to say it out loud. If what was said in that headline actually happens, that means our borrowing rate as a country goes up, okay? That means that debt interest that we showed you there on a line item, it goes up and we all have to pay it. Now, one of the reasons why we're in such trouble is because we don't have serious people running the show, apparently. We don't have people in the finance department. I'm talking to you, bureaucrats. What the heck are you doing? Scream at that political staff who's coming to you with their stupid binders saying, we can go into deeper debt. It's all fine. No, stand up to them. Tell them that your charts and all your formulas are showing that this is a bad thing. I know that's what they're showing. So you tell them, stand up to them. Say no. Say no to this ridiculous deficit spending, okay? The reason why we're in such trouble is twofold. A, because we've got unserious people who are printing off 500-page budgets that are full of fluff and nonsense and full of bad math like that. And on the other side of things, that same government is strangling our revenue side. So in the budget, okay, there's basically two columns, okay? There's spending, okay? So expenditure, doesn't matter if they call it operating or capital, by the way, it's all spending. So money going out, that's one column. Money coming in is the other column. The government gets money from tax dollars. How do we generate more tax dollars? We generate more wealth in Canada with good jobs, especially in things like the resource industry, which is why Premier Danielle Smith gave Carney that deadline of Grey Cup, saying we have got to get our resources out to market. Take your foot off of our neck, approve our pipelines, get rid of the West Coast tanker ban so we can get more wealth coming back into this country and try to save that dumpster fire of a budget. Let's fix things. Let's right the ship. But I don't know, man. I don't know about righting this ship, because now the captain's cracking jokes about pipelines. I'm going to tee up this clip because I couldn't believe it when I saw it late last week. This is Prime Minister Mark Carney, a dude who has a PhD in economics from Oxford, I will point out, knows how to do the math, okay? Knows where money comes from. This is Prime Minister Mark Carney on stage being interviewed by a young lady who rightly is asking him about how do we get pipelines approved? Is it happening soon? Because it matters to our prosperity. She asks him this. Listen to his answer.
One of my questions was, is this pipeline going to come?
So boring.
It's not actually.
It is. It is because it's. Don't worry, we're on it. We're on it.
And
but there is this whole world.
Party?
Okay, hands up. Who's working on the pipeline in this room?
In case you didn't hear that little muttered thing that he just said, he said, so boring. Okay. Even I, in my most optimistic, white pill mood, cannot say, oh, he's just trying to make pipelines boring again, because there's so many of them getting approved that it becomes ho-hum and just a thing. It just happens all the time. You know, water is wet, fork found in kitchen. We're getting pipelines approved, so therefore it's boring. That is not how I'm reading that clip at all. At all. Because he goes on to say, it's going to happen, and then he corrects himself. He says, well, something will happen. Okay. The Prime Minister, this current Prime Minister, not the last guy who kept on pointing to his socks and said that the budget will balance itself and clearly had a hate on for Alberta's energy sector, not that guy. This guy, the current guy, just called pipelines so boring. Do you think this is going to work for him? Just from a pure comms perspective, do you think that this cute surfer dude thing is going to fit for Carney? I don't think he's pulling it off. I don't. And financially speaking, we can't afford this. We can't afford grown men sitting there on stage, by the way, being super rude to that interviewer who was rightly asking about prosperity, saying pipelines are so boring. Boy, oh boy, we're in trouble. Where are we going to go from here? Okay, I think we need to find out from Parliament Hill on what the temperature is like in downtown Ottawa. Are they taking this seriously? What's happening with our money? We're going to get to that in a second, but first, let's check in with our sponsor.
Look, folks, it's time to modernize Canada's rules on nicotine. Alternatives to cigarettes, like heated tobacco vaping products and oral smokeless products, don't burn tobacco or produce smoke. They aren't risk-free, but the growing body of scientific evidence shows that they have the potential to be substantially less harmful than smoking. Despite this, Canadians are banned access to critical information and even some products. Nicotine pouches remain banned in convenience stores, and current laws ban communication about the risks of these products compared to cigarettes. It's unbelievable. The evidence is here. The tools exist. Canadians should have the freedom to know. You can learn more by visiting unsmoke.ca.
Okay, so we're in a serious situation here, folks. We're headed to a $1.3 trillion national debt. We are wasting money hand over fist. Just Google any of these silly government procurements. It's everything from gender-neutral rice in Vietnam to $100,000 for a grocery cart documentary. I'm not making any of that up. We spent money. It was over $1,000. We spent money on a lesbian pirate musical last year. It's the craziest thing. Hey, if that is what you want to go watch, you go fill your peg leg. But you do it on your own dime. Don't make taxpayers pay for it. So we've got a serious situation with the budget. We don't have a renegotiated trade deal with our biggest trading partner, and we don't clearly have someone who sounds earnest about getting our natural resources to market, because he's calling that boring. How do we fix this? Let's find out. Joining me now is Andrew Lawton. Yes, you must remember him from shows just like this one, in fact, on True North and Juno. Now, Andrew, you are a member of Parliament for, let's get the title correct here, Elgin, St. Thomas, London South, also known as London, Ontario. Thank you so much, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with. This is actually, I believe, my first time on Juno since I was sworn in. I did an interview with Candace right after the election, but I was not yet a member of Parliament. So what's been taking you guys so long?
I'm sorry. It's one of those things where I just watch you and then I think about you, and I didn't make the connection of, oh, right, he should come on the actual program and talk with his face so that,
Yeah.
viewers can actually know what's going on with him instead of me just texting you. Okay, so just generally, how are you doing? What is the latest thing being like? What's it like being a member of Parliament? Did they tell you where the alien spacecraft is buried yet? Or do you need to form government for that?
Yeah, that might be in government. I haven't gotten
Ah,
any memos on that one, although I'm a little bit behind on the unmarked manila envelopes in the office. So we'll see. Look, it's been so exciting. I mean, I used to be an observer of politics for so long, and I used to, on my show, often with you, talk about all the things that I wish the people in Ottawa were doing. And I got tired of waiting for them to do it. I figured I had to show up and do it myself. And we're part of a fantastic team. And obviously, look, we're in opposition, not government. We expected a different result and hoped for a different result, but there's still so much to do. And we're seeing on, a lot of the issues that I've been really driving hard on my shows over the years, whether it's, reckless government spending, liberal government censorship, regulation and control of media. All of these things are still very much alive and well from the government. So I'm happy to be there in the chamber pushing back against this.
it's neat. Like, I have to ask you just personally, do you like it? Like, do you like being a member of Parliament and like talking to people? I think you're in your constituency this week, right?
Yeah. For Remembrance Day, we have a lot of events going on. I love it. I mean, what did I do? If I weren't in politics right now, I'd still be doing the same thing, which is talking about politics and, meeting with people and trying to move the needle on some of these big picture issues. So I'm happy to be doing it in the House of Commons, but I love being back in the constituency. It's the people there who you got to get the Ottawa off of you every now and then and talk to real people. So I really like weeks like this.
Yeah, getting auto-washed is a bane of federal politics. I know that you represent my Uncle Brad, actually, is right in your riding there in London South. So thank you for joining us as your role as a member of Parliament. Okay, let's get into I don't even want to call it a budget. It seems like a violation of the English language that was released last week. But my goodness, Andrew, like we've got close to an $80 billion deficit. And some of the language in there was just unserious. The way they're talking about maybe sort of having a meeting someday about lifting the energy cap on Alberta. There's no plans to ever balance the budget. And this is coming from a guy with a PhD in economics. Like, what is the mood in Ottawa when you guys saw this budget? What was your reaction?
Well, I wanted nothing more than for all of the fears that we had to be disproven. I wanted a fiscally responsible budget. I wanted a government that would listen to opposition parties. And I'll just say, I've seen minority parliaments before, and the obligation, the onus has always been on the government to find a way to get a budget passed, to find a way to get support from opposition parties. And in this particular case, there's been basically no desire by the Liberal government to try to meet us in the middle even and talk about the affordability crisis, talk about how Canadians are being just driven into personal household debt because of runaway inflation, which is directly tied to reckless government spending and deficit. So I was really hoping that we would get something that was trying to address some of these key issues. And instead, we have a deficit and a debt load that is making Justin Trudeau look fiscally responsible. And that is terrifying. Mark Carney's budget makes Justin Trudeau's financial plans look like they are responsible.
I can't believe we're even saying this. Seriously. Like, think back years ago, even back when Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of Canada. Like, can you imagine saying, oh, he's fiscally more reckless than Justin Trudeau? Like, What?
Yeah. He is set to rack up about double in debt what Justin Trudeau was going to. We're looking at over the next several years, $320 billion in debt. Now, just to put this in context, this year alone, we're going to be spending $55 billion, I think 55.6 on debt interest. And you and I used to talk about this when I was doing my show. That is money we are literally lighting on fire.
Yep.
That is money we are throwing into the paper shredder. That is money we are doing nothing with. That is more than the federal government spends in health transfers to provinces. That's more than Canada collects in GST revenue. That is debt interest. And that number gets larger and larger the larger the debt gets. And it also gets larger when interest rates go up, which is another consideration we have to keep in mind here. So this is something that is going to, I mean, Mark Carney liked to tell young Canadians at that speech a couple of weeks ago, they're going to need to be making sacrifices. Well, yeah, because he is mortgaging their fiscal future for his reckless spending right now.
Yeah, that sacrifices quote was horrible because some people were trying to spin it saying, oh, he actually means he's going to reduce the size and the cost of the bureaucracy. No. He was talking to young people saying you need to sacrifice more. I'll be blunt. I've got Gen Z kids. They've sacrificed enough. Thank you. In most places across Canada, most of that generation, they've given up on ever owning a house. And I hate saying that out loud because it's a terrible thing to say. But this is the situation they're in right now. They were the kids that were directly impacted the most by lockdowns when they were kicked out of school for ages on end. Like, they've had enough. Okay. Like, I think I can speak for Gen X and Gen Z. They've had enough of this. And so the language and the millennials, the language coming out of Carney saying you're going to have to sacrifice more. Andrew, I think my nightmare kind of came true. I was holding out hope that it would be the fiscal guy, the Bank Canada guy that would actually be able to be better than Trudeau with money, and not this guy, not the one who wrote the book as the UN special envoy about all this carbon taxes, carbon tariffs, all these extra prices on energy coming out of Canada, and just basically treating money as a social construct. But that guy's the one that showed up, and that's the budget we have. I got to ask you, what was the mood in the party? So you're there, you're with the Conservative Party, you're sitting in the House of Commons. What was the mood that ran through there when we saw that warning come from Fitch about a possible, I don't even want to say it, the idea of our credit rating being adjusted, putting it nicely?
Well, look, I think the mood was I don't even want to say surprise because we're seeing what you've just identified, Chris, which is that during the campaign, Mark Carney's pitch to Canadians, what he was going to be this fiscally moderate, maybe even fiscally conservative guy. He had all of this economic experience. He even called himself, I believe, the great economist. He said that in a response to question period. And that's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing this. And he also promised himself as the guy that could move quickly. He could move at the speed of crisis. And we have not seen all of these promises. We haven't seen him get spending under check. We haven't seen him get a deal with the U.S. We haven't seen him save the auto sector like he promised. Instead, we've seen just a summer and fall of hemorrhaging auto jobs. And that one's very near and dear to my riding. We lost the 1,200 jobs just down the road at the Cami plant. We had 3,000 at Brampton Stellantis. We had in the hundreds, I believe, at Packer in Saint-Thérèse, Quebec. We had GM in Oshawa, and this was literally just in the span of 3 to 4 weeks. So we now have a situation where more and more Canadians are not producing because they are out of work, because they are dealing with this. And now we have on the other side a government that's not living within its means. And why this is so important is because all of this is subject to change if government spending goes up even further. This is just the roadmap. We have seen governments in the past blow past these things, what Chrystia Freeland jokingly called she didn't mean it as a joke, but the fiscal guardrail, which ended up just being like so small you could barely see it because they blew past it so far. And this is what we're going to be seeing a lot more of over the next few years. So this is something that is very concerning. Deficits and debt, they may seem like abstract numbers, but it is literally Mark Carney spending $5,400 more on behalf of every Canadian household. So if you don't have that money lying around, you should ask why the Liberal government thinks that it should be able to spend that on your behalf.
Two more things, because I know you're very busy. You've got a very packed constituency week. Two more things. In the budget, they also talked about more money for media. I got to point out, they had announced the extra $150 million for the CBC during the election campaign. And people were fine with that. No, we're not fine with that. Journalists should never be paid by the government. But here it is in the budget in black and white. Yep, an extra 150 million with an M for CBC, and extra money for other forms of media. Is this ringing through? Are you guys able to punch through this noise? Because I feel bad for you guys sometimes in the opposition benches, actually, no matter which the party, if you're opposed to things like government-funded media, because you're surrounded by government-funded media. You're surrounded by the press gallery. Is this punching through this message that we need to defund the media?
Look, there is a grocery store outside my constituency office, and I've been in there. Well, I go there all the time after work, and I've been in there several times, and you can actually see people just really looking at the price tags, really not sure if they can afford this. I've seen people put things back on shelves. I hear people come into my office all the time who don't know how they're going to fill up their car. They don't know how they're going to pay their rent. They don't know how they're going to choose between whether they buy groceries this week or whether they buy a birthday present for their child. I have heard this. And then the government comes and says, okay, well, we can't do that really, but we can bring Eurovision to Canada. Like that's what the Liberals have done. That's part of the things they want to do with the $140 million. They want to bring Eurovision to Canada. Now, I shouldn't be surprised. Mark Carney's a guy who, openly identifies as European. He kind of collects passports like trading cards. But I'm sorry, when you're dealing with an affordability crisis, Canadians want to be able to live. They want to be able to pay their bills on time. They don't want to be able to, suffer in a cold house with an empty fridge while enjoying Europop on CBC.
And folks, that's in the budget. I talked about that.
Yeah, no, I'm not making that. Literally, that is in the budget. Yes, I am not making that up. That is not conjecture. That is literally what the government thought was so important. It had to be in black and white on the budget.
Yep. Eurovision. I kid you not. Okay, lastly, you mentioned the cozying up to the European Union. Last I checked, they are not the economic manufacturing powerhouse that they were, I don't know, in the 19th century. They're just not. And I hate to point this out, this is sounding a lot like the first Trudeau back in the 70s when he was trying to realign ourselves over with our cousins in Europe. Guys, we have the United States, okay? We do two-way trade every day. $3 billion a day. It's more than $1 trillion a year. And they seem to be completely thumbing their nose at this relationship with the States. I don't care if you don't like the president as a person. Don't care. Our trading relationship is super important. And yet all we're hearing is that they're not actually talking. Last I saw, there was committee that was just given testimony this morning that they haven't met since August. So it sure doesn't sound like they're taking this trade situation seriously. I have to stress, I was listening to Ben Shapiro over the weekend, and he rightly pointed out, again, tariffs are trade taxes. They're just trade taxes, and they cost people money on both sides of the border. What are you hearing? Are we going to get a renegotiated trade deal with the United States, this super important economy, or are we not?
Well, yeah, you're right to point out the tariffs hurt everyone. They hurt both sides in the long run. Some may disproportionately feel the pain more in the short term, but over time, I do not like tariffs. I do not support them. I want what Mark Carney promised, which was a deal by July. But just on Europe for a moment, it's not even like we're trading with Europe all that well, because we have a steady stream of European heads of government and heads of state that say they would love nothing more than to buy Canadian LNG. And Justin Trudeau's famous words on this, there's no business case. Well, the Prime Minister of Greece wants Canadian LNG. The Chancellor of Germany wants Canadian LNG. There was another one as well. I can't remember who, but Europeans want Canadian resources, and we say, okay, well, we'll replace the U.S. with Europe, but we aren't even giving the Europeans access to the special commodity that we have that would help offset some of what we're losing with the U.S. So, no, I do not believe we can ever conjure 350 million people to trade with out of thin air. So we do want to make a deal. Obviously, we have to decide as a country what our non-negotiables are. But, at the very least, we have to negotiate. And that has not been happening. And I think, again, Mark Carney may not have been able to promise that he was going to get a deal, but he did. He chose to make that promise. He chose to do that. He chose to say that he would get it done, and he hasn't. And look, I live in a riding that has a lot of manufacturing. We are just about an hour from the Canada-US border, well, I guess, an hour and a bit. So we are really personally hit by this, as are so many of the people that I represent, and they want a deal. This isn't just some abstract, chess piece, some chess game. This is literally their livelihood.
It is. It is. I want to let you go here, but this is The Fighter. That's the show. We always want to fight for change. So I want to encourage people, all of our viewers, all of our listeners, and your constituents, that the fight isn't over. We can still fix stuff. We can still change stuff. This is a minority parliament. Andrew, how do they best fight to get these changes that they want to see? How do your constituents fight for this?
Look, the one thing I have learned being a member of parliament is that you do receive the messages and the calls that come in. I know sometimes people might have really bad MPs that aren't responsive, and sure, maybe that's there. I make a point of reading everything that comes in. I make a point of talking to as many constituents as possible. And if there's a trend, if people are saying, hey, you got to do X on this, even if it goes against what my party thinks, I'm going to bring that up. And I encourage people to, as fruitless as it may seem, make sure you're contacting your member of parliament, and don't give them form emails. Request a meeting, sit down, look them in the eye and say, I think you need to do this on this. And it doesn't mean you're going to get your way, but it means that we have to start putting some pressure on so that they can bring that to Ottawa. Because if no one does that, if no one reaches out, then no one is standing up for what you believe. And I can assure you the other side is. So if I get, 100 emails telling me, they want a budget that has an even bigger deficit, and no one emails me to say, hey, I'm worried about government spending, that's going to give me a skewed imbalance of what people think.
Andrew Lawton, Member of Parliament for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South, and a friend to this show. Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Always a pleasure, Chris, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. So that you just heard was Andrew Lawton. He gave us the perspective from the federal perspective. What is happening with the big stage? What is happening with the United States? Why on earth did Carney deliver the budget? I can't even call it that. That budget that he delivered last week. What do we need to do to actually fight back? And he's absolutely right, folks. Again, I have family in that area of Ontario. I'm sure lots of our viewers are right there in that area right now, or they have family there. Ontario right now is just getting a beating because of what is going on, A, with this budget, and B, with this lack of accountability with the responsibility to get a new deal with the United States. And if we continuously allow all of these bureaucrats and the Prime Minister to just waste our money, keep in mind the Prime Minister's paid $400,000 a year. Yes, I just said that, $400,000 a year. Bureaucrats in some of these cases who never have to get elected, they're paid between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. This is their job, to straighten out things like this trade negotiation, this trade fight they're having with the United States in order to get tariffs gone on both sides of the border. And very importantly, to get investment flowing back into Canada so that we can build stuff like mines and pipelines, so that we can have that business case for things like natural gas. Because of course, if we have our natural resources firing on all cylinders, that lifts all boats. That makes sure that we have better paying jobs. And guess what? Those better paying jobs come along with income taxes that we are paying, which then goes into government. So it's a two-way street. Most of those natural resources, when we're talking about things like oil and natural gas, come from right here. They come from Alberta. And we've got a deadline happening on Grey Cup. Remember, folks, Grey Cup, it's this Sunday. It's going to be the Rough Riders versus the Alouettes. They're kicking off in Winnipeg this Sunday. So at the start of next week, that was the deadline that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith gave to the Prime Minister of Canada to get moving on things like getting rid of the No More Pipelines law, getting rid of the West Coast tanker ban, getting things moving again here. So where are we with that? Let's find out. Joining me now is Martin Belanger. You probably know him online as Marty Upn North. You can find him everywhere on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Marty, you are on a plethora of what I would describe as, say, small C conservative, independent, kind of freedom-oriented media. You're super active on X. I'm trying to remember when I first connected with you. I think it might have been when you did that thing that went viral, where you show your picture and you say, this is my name and this is what I stand for. Yeah.
Chris, I just got goosebumps thinking about that, because to be honest, you're one of the first people who reached out to me in real life. Like, I had existed on X and I had a lot of connections, but you were one of the first live connection. You reached out to me. Remember, we had coffee in Calgary.
We did.
I drove down to Calgary and we had coffee. So yeah. Oh, by the way, and I just want to mention this to people. I noticed you got your poppy. I don't have a poppy on right now. Sorry, folks. It's not a political statement. They're just in the car. I don't wear a poppy typically around the house, right? So
same. I know.
Yes.
I have to keep a stack next to the camera, because otherwise, like, I buy like 10 at the beginning of, the commemorative season, but they always fall off. So, and they get mad at you if you stick a pin through them and stuff. Anyway, no, all good. It's there in spirit. Marty, I wanted to get your thoughts on what is going on coming out of Ottawa. In particular, let's start with the freshest thing. I just saw you posting about, we've got some Canadians now saying, hey, why don't we have a trade deal with the United States yet? Where are the negotiations happening between Canada and US President Donald Trump? I gotta say, over the weekend, I was listening to Ben Shapiro, and he made the great point. And he said, from the American perspective on tariffs, do we really want to go down this route forever? Because then another president can declare like a climate emergency and impose a huge tariff on every single gasoline and diesel powered everything coming into the United States. Do we want to do that? And he makes the right point that tariffs are just trade taxes. But it doesn't sound like Ottawa is taking this seriously.
We're all asking those questions. I mean, we're supposedly, the election was won on the fact that we were supposedly in an existential threat, the largest threat we'd ever faced, right? Never mind World War II, COVID, all the climate change, they're all gone now. The newest threat was that Donald Trump was attacking us and we were in a trade war. But what's happened since, we don't know. Canadians are finally, some Canadians are waking up. I mean, Parliament's been sitting, it's going to be the shortest session of a Parliament since like the 1930s. Like, they'll have set 70 days this year. They're blowing hot air. And people are exposing it. I mean, just today, Arlene Dickinson was in committee saying that, actually back to that trade war. I mean, in the days after the election, Carney did all these things, set up this committee of, what was it called? The Canada-US Relations Committee or whatever that was going to go negotiate. And he recruited experts to help him negotiate. Well, one of those experts, Arlene, she said today, there hasn't been a meeting of the committee in months. Like, and they're not doing anything. So, we're in a trade war, but we're losing it.
It just doesn't seem like there's adults in the room. Marty, you've worked in natural resources for a long time. And again, that's one of the things we were talking about over that coffee. It was great actually meeting you in person. So we don't seem to be having the adults in the room. I got to tell you, I still had a little bit of naivete with Carney. I was telling myself, well, he does have a PhD in economics from Oxford. He is a former central banker. He's got to be better with the budget than Trudeau.
Right.
Spoiler alert, he was not. He's worse. And then I heard him say that crazy clip that was on Friday. He's being interviewed by a young lady. It looks like it's in Toronto. And frankly, as an interviewer, he was super rude. Like, terribly rude to the young woman. And she asks him about pipelines. And he goes on this kind of Valley Girl thing of, boring. This is so boring. I'm bored now. Yeah. What is the messaging?
I mean, he basically was, sorry, I was doing what he was doing to her, right? He was basically putting his hand in her face and saying, let's talk about something else. And that's an interesting one. Yes, pipelines are near and dear to me. You're talking about adults in the room. There is an adult in the room, right? Danielle Smith here in Alberta is trying to be an adult, and God bless her. But maybe naively, like you just said, she had a lot of faith in Carney in the beginning. Remember, back during the election, she didn't know who was going to be the prime minister, but she kind of set out an ultimatum of like 9 requests to the future prime minister, which turned out to be Carney. And in there, she said, I want a pipeline. I want Bill C-69 repealed. I want the tanker ban gone. The net zero talk. I don't want to hear that anymore. I want, she and her ultimatum is due next week during the Grey Cup. And again, it's one of those things. I don't see anything. I think she's going to be disappointed. I don't see anything Carney. I don't see Carney taking her seriously, taking anybody seriously in this country. In fact, I was in the same boat as you, Chris. I thought, okay, I wasn't happy that Carney got elected, but I kind of thought, well, maybe he will be a little bit different. He's not different. The team around him is absolutely not different. It's the same ministers. It's the same bunch. And I'm convinced more than ever that he's pushing an agenda that's not ours, that's not his. Well, it's his. It is the UN Agenda 2030 and 2050. They're pushing those agendas on us because he lets it slip out all the time. He's constantly talking about social credits and digital ID, and he can't let go of net zero. He's still talking net zero. You got to watch his language. Like he's not talking pipelines. He's talking energy corridors. Like it's a language. And then when he's talking energy corridors, he's talking electricity. I mean, they want to electrify everything. There's a reason they want to electrify everything, because once everything's electric, it's way easier to control. You can't control the gas and the oil because we can move it around with trucks and everything else. But boy, the electricity, they can control that. So we're going all over the place, but no, I don't see Carney doing anything specific to fight the economic the trade war, and I don't see him doing anything specific to try and get Alberta back on board on Team Canada. And then his budget last week was an absolute disaster. I don't even I don't know where you want to go. There's not a lot of good
I just
news.
basically wanted to get a checkup from you because we already spoke with Andrew Lawton, who of course was a former host right here on True North, and then that became Juno. Now he's a member of Parliament representing London, Ontario, which I would describe as a really big working class city. I know I've got family there, and so I wanted to get your perspective from a Western perspective on what's your hunch. Like, do you think that they're being serious about this? Because I'll put it this way. I'm hearing some hope coming from Edmonton. I'm hearing some hope of like, we're close to a deal on a pipeline. All we need to do is to do more kind of carbon capture magic stuff, and that they're going to go for it. And I don't want to crush those hopes coming from Edmonton because I hope it's true. But I don't know if it's true, man. And I wanted to get your gut check on this because two things happened. The budget language, that was really squishy. I don't know if you saw it when it was talking about maybe sometime eventually having a meeting to get rid of the energy cap in Alberta. And it was all based on, like carbon capture, da-da-da-da. I'm worried that that comes along with too big a price, i.e. a really big industrial carbon tax. So, and that's written right into his budget documents. And then we see right on the heels of that, we see that clip from Carney basically saying flippantly, oh, well, you know, pipelines are boring. And you notice how he corrected himself at the end of that? He's like, it'll happen. Something will happen. He corrected. Something will happen. And that's where I think you're right. I think this is going to be more solar panels and wind farm corridors.
I'll answer it very pragmatically. We hurt ourselves in the last decade, more than the last decade, in the last 15 years. So the private sector right now is like arms crossed and really waiting to see what happens. Capital from the private sector will not flow into this economy at this point. Like companies are willing to drill a few wells and do, maintain kind of status quo, but no company in Alberta at this point wants to commit to a $10 or $15 billion pipeline. They just don't. And so that's the reality. And some people have picked up on that. And they're saying, and then they're saying, well, that's because the industry, there's no economics in it. No. The industry is just, when you're building stuff, you need to manage risk. And unfortunately, our governments have become a very hard to manage risk. And so some companies are just not wading in. Are there companies that have pipelines on the shelf ready to go? Absolutely. Enbridge does, TransCanada does, they all do, but they're all arms crossed right now, waiting to hear what. So it's a chicken and egg thing right now. It's problematic because no company even wants to talk about pipelines until we truly hear what Carney has to say. And then Carney's saying, well, there's no appetite for pipelines. You know what I mean? So there's an appetite, but the risk is just too high. I mean, I sat in on those meetings. I sat in trying to get my boss is interested in building pipelines here in the last 5 years, and that's, my boss has said, no, we're not doing this. It's too risky. So we have to. So there's and we need a serious statesman, because this is not just a problem to pipelines, right? Like, I've said this many times. This is a problem for one. Even if your pet project is like we said, hospitals, wind farms, solar farms, whatever.
A mine.
All capital in this.
Yeah.
A mine. Yeah. Anything. An electric dam. It's like it's all dried up right now. The capital is not coming to Canada. And that's evidenced in a lot of stats. Like, there's a lot of stats that shows the capital leaving the country.
Big time, because we have the United States.
So Carney has to, so next week's an important week. We'll see how, I'm looking forward to seeing how Danielle Smith manages her ultimatum, because ultimatums are nasty, right? When you issue an ultimatum and the other party ignores your ultimatum. So we have an interesting week ahead of us.
Based on the record, I can't see her tolerating her ultimatum being ignored. I just can't. Look at what just happened with the ongoing teacher strike. They were demanding an extra $2 billion, and they said no with an exclamation mark. So I can't see them ignoring that ultimatum from the Alberta side of things. I wanted to leave on this point. I often, leading up to this budget, to me, speaking of ultimatums, to me, this budget was the true test. So, yes, we had the election, and then there was kind of the phony sitting that happened, and then we had the summer. And so I was waiting until this budget to see which Mark Carney we were actually going to get. So there was the little silly hope inside of me that was still in there somewhere, not completely black-pilled, that was saying, oh, well, he's got to be better with Trudeau than money. And so will that guy stand up? Will he be that guy? Or will we get this guy, the one from his book that you were just describing, the UN guy?
Yep.
And of course, I keep on preaching this, folks, you have to read this book, okay? It's called Values. It's written by Mark Carney. It's basically his blueprint. It's literally the planet Earth with scaffolding around it, okay? It was endorsed by Bono, and he mentions Greta Thunberg all the way through it. And so he wrote this while he was the UN Special Envoy on this topic. And so the language in that budget, and it is like 500 pages long. The language in that budget is alarming because it talks a lot about really fluffy stuff that doesn't belong inside of a budget. It dangles a carrot on things like lifting the energy production cap, but doesn't actually commit to doing it. And the numbers are astonishing. We've got an $80 billion deficit. That means we're adding that. That's how much we're in the hole just for this year. Our debt is going to hit 1.3 trillion with a T by the end of this fiscal. Did you? I don't know how closely you follow the financial markets. Did you see that warning come through from Fitch saying that we might be getting a credit downgrade? That's when things really hit the road.
That's incredible, because the companies never downgrade. Credit companies rarely ever downgrade, because they, like, it's a game they play. As long as they got to keep lending you money. They'd rather lend money to somebody who's about to go bankrupt than get nothing, right? But your point on the budget. I mean, the budget is it's worse than a continuity budget. Like, if you look at the trend, right? I mean, Trudeau's first budget was like $280 billion, and now Carney's at like almost $600 billion. So in 10 years, the spending by Ottawa has gone up by like 90%, right? And so it's outpacing inflation, it's outpacing population growth, everything. And then yes, even if you get into the minutia of the budget, there's some fluff in there, but even at the highest level, there's crazy fluff, right? Like, at the highest level this year, they're borrowing recklessly, and they always justify their reckless borrowing by saying, oh, our debt to GDP was okay. GDP is a false number, by the way. They can manipulate that, but they couldn't even manipulate their own numbers in the way that they wanted to, so they had to go to playing with the GDP, and then they're playing with the definition of capital spending and things like that. So at the high level, they're running out of ways to sell this insane budget, but unfortunately, Canadians are still buying into the insanity.
Well, it's going to hit the road. Lastly, I wanted to end on this. What's your call? Not about the Grey Cup itself, but about the Grey Cup deadline. What do you think is going to happen here next week?
Well, I think in the last second, Carney's going to throw something to Danielle. I don't know what it's going to look like. He's going to try and, he's got to find something so she can save face, because she's got a problem right now. She issued an ultimatum, and then behind the scenes, she has a growing separatist movement in her. Like she's being attacked on all sides, so she needs a win. So Carney's going to have to try and throw her a win of some sort. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but he's going to do something.
Martin, thank you so much for your time today. As always, folks, go check out Martin Belanger. You know him as Marty Upn North online. Go find him on X, and he is on all of the shows. Thank you so much for your time today, sir.
My pleasure. Cheers, everyone.
Okay, folks, this is where you get conversations like this. So make sure that you have liked this video and that you've headed on over to Juno News and you have subscribed to Juno News. And I just wanted to point something out that tomorrow is November 11th. It's Remembrance Day. If I may, I just wanted to mention that as a Gen Xer, okay, I was born in the 70s and raised in the 80s. I had a bird's eye view of being able to speak directly to Second World War veterans, even the couple First World War veterans when I was a little kid. But more importantly, being in touch with Second World War veterans was a commonplace thing for Gen Xers. In fact, my elementary school teacher was a Second World War vet. So to me, every day of that school year was a form of Remembrance Day, because he was one of the rare Canadians who was over in the Pacific Theater. And so he would talk about what happened and how he became a POW. And he spent, I think it was 2 years in a prison camp. And it was a real living history. It was a real living memory for so many of our seniors that we talked to as kids all the time. And I've noticed that in younger generations, so my kids' generation, there is a huge deficit of knowledge about history. And that's not a good thing. So I would strongly recommend for those of you watching, if you're Gen X and older, okay, don't take for granted what you know and understand, especially about the wars, the First World War, and in particular, the Second World War. Don't assume your kid is learning this at school. Likely they're not. So I would just little dashboard light, ask them what they know about the Second World War. And if they don't know that much, pop on a good documentary back from the 1980s when people did stuff thoroughly. And I'm going to be making sure to heading down to the Cenotaph here in Lethbridge tomorrow. Once again, folks, we're Juno. That's why we're called Juno, right? Is to honor that. So be sure to head on over to our website, Juno News, check out our articles there, and especially share this video with friends who need to know.